Welcome to DK Champ. I've had a couple people ask me how I pick my lineups and why I pick the people that I do, and I just wanted to share with you some of the strategies that I use to pick my people and how sometimes as a first time Draftkings user you can get caught up in some of the hype here. So I'm going to show you. It's really easy to show you in basketball, even though it works for all the sports. It's just easier to explain in basketball. So I'm pulled up the utility spot here, and I'm going to show you what I do and why it's not smart to play some of these top tier guys. So when you look up here, you'll see four guys that are $10,000, and that is a lot of money when you're talking about, you have to average 62, 50 on each player. So when you're looking at 10,000, that's a lot of money. So the reason that these guys are so expensive is because they are consistently scoring in the 50-point range. So if you look at Curry's stats, he's 58, 52, and 46. And let's go to LeBron. He's 50, 43. We'll go to Durant. He is 48, 63, 47. So what these guys are consistently performing at the 50-point range. So that's great. That's 5 times the value. That's what we're looking for in our sport. So you always want to try to get 5 times your value out of these guys. But what I like to do is scroll down just a little bit, and you're looking at these guys that may not be as consistent. Like Booker's a really good example. He may not be a 50-point guy every night, but depending on who he's playing, he has the opportunity to have a 50-point night. Another example we can look at is Butler. He had a 46 the first night, a 57 the second night. So that is, when I'm looking at this stuff, I'm looking for the guys that are having really good matchups. And like when you look at Indianapolis here, it says that their opponent rank is 2. That is not an accurate number. I disregard those numbers altogether. They take a very long time to update, and you just have to look at the matchup itself. So we know that this is going to probably be a pretty fast-moving game, so that means Butler's going to have more opportunity. He's the primary scorer on this team, and for 8,000, he's a really good pick because he's going to get the minutes, and he is going to potentially get this 50-point range and save you $2,000. So that's kind of how I approach it. Another good example, let's roll down here, and we're going to keep going now so when we look at Portland and Nurkic, 62, and he's, but here's the thing, he has the potential to get a 50-point game. And when you're looking at who he's playing with Washington, who may not have the people that can stop him, I project him to have 45 to 50 points tonight. And it's all because that's the matchup that's going to be good for him. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for good matchups. I'm not necessarily looking for the guys that, have always done well and the guys that are going to score 50 points regardless, because a lot of times they're capped at that 50 points. I mean, every once in a while you'll see somebody go completely crazy and get a 70-point game or something like that, but it's not very often. And you're about a 50-50 shot if they're going to get to 50 points anyway, just depending on if the game's close or not, if you're just aimlessly picking the top guys all the time. So I like to play around and look at these guys. Like the Vine is a really good example too. I mean, he's 45-40 for 7,100, and he's going against Dallas tonight, which, I mean, Dallas is decent, but I really think that LeVine's going to have a really good night. So take a look at him, and when you're looking at these, that's kind of the thing. And then the second thing that I look for are guys that are going to be injured or out. So if we get to the Lakers, which I know this beforehand, but you'd have to kind of research and find out who's going to be out. So I want to look and see, I know that these two guys are going to be out. So what I do is I go and find out who's going to be next in line. So we know if Rondo's out, that Ball's going to be the guy. And if I can get Ball for 55 and get 35 to 40 points out of him, I feel like I've done a really good job. So that's kind of what I'm looking for there. And then when I find out a guy's injured and he's going to miss a game, then I am going back and I'm looking to see who's going to be the guy that's stepping in for him. Because if it's somebody that has really taken advantage of the 15 minutes that they were getting and they're scoring 10, 15 fantasy points in those 15 minutes, if they get an up kick and they're getting 30 fantasy points, then their chances of getting those 30 points at a very cheap price for you is elevated. So I think that's that's the way that I approach these. So I'm looking for matchups, and I'm looking for guys that may be out or injured, and I'm looking for their replacements. The last thing you can do is to take the gameplay. So when I look at every time I look at a Jazz game, so this Conley, he's had a pretty good season. It's been average, but for 66, and you have potential to get 30 to 40 points a night out of him. I would not play him tonight because he's playing Utah, and their whole philosophy is to slow the game down. So anybody that's playing Utah, I try to fade them unless it's just going to be a guy that needs to be slow, like a center that needs time to get down the floor. Then I would play a center against them, but I would not play like your guards against Utah because they slow the game down so much that there's less possessions in the game. And you have to look at that. And then when you look at some of these games that are going to be really fast-paced, then those are the guys you got to target. And I don't remember what game it was, but it was a Chicago game last week, and I knew that it was just going to be a really fast-paced game. And let's see, it may be I think it was Detroit. They were looking at this game to be like a really high projection total, and it's just going to be fast-paced. They're going to be moving up and down the floor, getting shots, and the more opportunities these guys have to shoot the ball, the more opportunities there are for rebounds, assists. It's just endless opportunities that way. So, look at those things. Look at the gameplay and study how these teams perform in the groups. Like, we want to know how Utah would perform against Memphis. Are they going to slow it down, or are they going to try to run at them? And they're definitely going to try to slow it down. San Antonio is also known for slowing it down. Even though that is supposed to be a high-scoring game tonight, they're known to slow it down. The Charlotte-Toronto game is probably going to be pretty high pace. It's going to be a fast-moving game. There's probably going to be a lot of points scored, and it would be in your best interest probably to look at some of these guys as potential players for you, because this game could go up to probably 250 points possibly, and that is something that you need to look at. So that's what I try to do is, those are the main strategies that I use. And I also go on to a couple of different websites, RotoWire and Roto Grinders, and I just go up there and read some of the articles, and I get in the forums and just kind of look around, and I chat up there and just try to find out what people are thinking, because I like to hear what other people have to think. And sometimes some of the picks that I say are things that someone has convinced me that this person is going to have a good game, and I like to stay away from that sometimes, because if I just look at it and I can see that this might be a good matchup and everybody doesn't look at it that way, then I have more of an advantage than I do going and looking online at different lineups. But I will tell you that going to these lineup builders and just aimlessly clicking make my lineup based on projections is probably the worst thing you can do, because those projections are most of the time not accurate, and most of the time, I think the highest projected